All right, guys, welcome to my next video. All right, now I'm the author of the book 109. Here's a copy right here. This book is available at SO1 Books and at Mercato Restaurant in Little Ethiopia. All right, I want to talk to you all about my book, and I want to explain to you this whole concept. Now, we're going to travel together into this rabbit hole of sorts, because everything about this 109, it touches on so many different schools of thought, if you will. And let's take a look, shall we? All right. Let's talk about math, because these are numbers that we're talking about, 1, 0, and 9. And the number 1 is a whole number, it's an integer, it's a natural number. All of these definitions mean that this number, or yeah, all of these definitions define what the number 1, means in math. Okay, and for the mathematicians, I'm not a math, expert over here, but I had to look into the math to get an understanding of what was happening to me, basically. All right, next, 0. All right, it's a whole number, it's an integer, it is not a natural number. Okay, I forgot what is a natural number and what is differentiated. So if you know better than I do, then add a comment and explain that. Join the conversation at the bottom of this video in the comment section, please. All right. The number 9 is a whole number, integer. It's a natural number. All right. So these are some ideas and concepts about the numbers 1, 0, and 9 that I discovered after doing, a cursory search. Some cursory research on the internet through Google and such. All right. So taken together, 1, 0, and 9. Yeah, that's the whole concept, right? Whole, integer, and natural number defines what 1, 0, and 9, 109 collectively. That number together is a whole number, integer, and a natural number. Okay. Something interesting, one of the most interesting laws that I learned about, which relates to statistics. So we're moving from mathematics into statistics, is this law. It's called Bentons Law. And Bentons Law states that if you have a large set of numbers or a data set, and it's a group of numbers, well, if you look closely, if you examine those numbers, you will find that 30% of the numbers will begin with the number 1. Okay? Let me explain that another way. Let's say you were to okay, in my case, the license plate numbers, okay? License plates, that's where I've seen the numbers 109 often. So if we were to take look at a database of all of the license plate numbers in a city in the United States, for instance, or some area, and if we were to look at all those license plates, because they give you because a license is an alphanumeric number, or a set of numbers and letters, and it's a random group. Bentons Law states that 30% of those license plates would begin with the number 1. Okay, so that means that, so Bentons Law can be applied to almost anything. If you look at a book, and if you look at the number of pages in a book, 200 or 300 pages in a book. Well, Bentons Law says of the pages from 1 to 200 or 1 to 300, 30% of those numbers will begin with the number 1. So how does that play out, okay? You have the number 1, that would, for instance, that would be page 1, and then you would go all the way to page 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. So you already have the number 1, which begins with the number 1, or is the number 1, and then you have the number 10, which is 1 and 0, and those two numbers begin with the number 1. And then you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. All of those numbers begin with the number 1. So if you look at the numbers 1 through 200, 30% of the numbers in that list would begin with the number 1. All right? The number 2, 17.6% of the, or 17 or almost 18% of the numbers, for instance, in the book, or of all of the license plates in a city or some region, 17.6 or 18, nearly 18% of those pages or in the book or those license plates will begin with the number 2, and then the percentage decreases as we continue to move down the whole numbers, as we follow the list of whole numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So 1 is the most ubiquitous, the most widely dispersed. Okay, and that is interesting because what I'm talking about in my book 109 is I'm talking about how frequently I see these numbers 1, 0, and 9. Well, Bentleys Law would explain that 30% of the license plates that I would see on the road would begin with the number 1. So there's a 30% chance that I could walk outside of my home and see a license plate with the number 1, that begins with the number 1. It's a 30% chance of me seeing that number. All right. Now I'm going to keep going with this train of thought, because imagine how difficult it must be if it's 30%. Now 30% is kind of a low percentage, because, for instance, if you were going to go to Las Vegas and gamble, would you want to make a bet with a 30% chance of winning? You'd probably want a greater than 50% chance of, before you would place that bet. 70 to 80%. Of course, the house, doesn't allow for that, but that's beside the point. I digress. But the Bentleys Law says that at least 30% of the numbers that you will find naturally will begin with the number 1. Now, the number 1, 0, and 9 in that sequence, those are 3 numbers. So the likelihood of these numbers, 1, 0, and 9 put together, being spotted, being discovered in nature, is going to be less than 30%. It's going to go down even more. So that's why my story is so interesting, because the likelihood of any of us finding these numbers 1, 0, and 9 just like this, okay, is very, very low. It's less than 30%. Let's stick with that as a rule of thumb. It's less than 30%. Okay. A side note: when I've talked about 1, 0, and 9, I've also included 1, 0, 0, 9. Okay. For instance, when I look at the clock at 10:09 a.m. or p.m., I also include those instances as moments when I encounter 1, 0, and 9. All right. That leads into the next point. We've talked about math. We've talked about statistics. All right. Let's talk a little bit about time. Okay, because when I've seen 109, those instances when I have seen 109, I include those times when I see or when I check my watch at 1:09 a.m. or p.m. For instance, I was in Medellin, Colombia. I went to sleep around 9 o'clock, and then I just suddenly woke up, and I checked my clock on my cell phone, and it was exactly 1:09 a.m. All right. So that's one of those instances when I would say I had an encounter with these numbers. All right, 1:09 a.m. But it could also happen, 1:09 p.m. I may just check my watch and I may see that. All right. 10:09. All right, 10:09 a.m. or p.m. is another one of those instances. But we haven't talked about we haven't talked about this number 10:09. We haven't talked about that yet, okay? Because that's going to lead me to talk about the placeholders and go back to math. Another instance, 11:09. All right, if I look at the clock at 11:09 a.m. or p.m., I will still see 1, 0, and 9 right there. 11:09, 1, 0, and 9. Okay. All right. Now, so that covers the time, and we'll come back to 10:09 a.m. or p.m. the time. But another concept or an idea that I want to present is how I look at 109. All right. Sometimes I look at it like this. I put brackets here so that you can see the number 10 is bracketed here. I hope you can see this. 10, and then a smaller bracket over or under 9. So I'm clumping them together. 10 or 1 0 to make 10, and then 9. So there is 10 and 9. So I think of these numbers as 10, 9. That's the way I think of them. All right. But some other people have looked at this and said, and I've told them these numbers represent my birthday. And they said, oh, your birthday is January 9th. All right. Because what they're doing is they're not looking at this as 1, 0 as the number 10. Okay. As what I'm thinking of the number 10 as the representing the month of October. But what they're doing is they're looking at the number 1 as representing the first month of the year, January, and then 09 representing the day. So January 9th. So that's slightly different from what I'm doing, okay? And why do I do that? I do that because October 9th is my birthday. And that's the date that resonates with me, all right? But when someone looks at these numbers and says, oh, your birthday must be January 9th, that is a very intriguing point that they're making, because what they're saying is that this 0 here is a placeholder, right? So let's go back to math when we were learning math as kids, because placeholders is where I want to take this discussion next, all right? All right, in math, a placeholder is, okay, a digit. 0 is used as a placeholder in place value systems. All right, so we have those place values. Remember, here we have the units section here. All right, 9 is in the unit section. Next over is the tens. Okay, remember this from studying elementary math, tens, and then the hundreds, thousands, tens, thousands, hundred thousands, and then millions. So as we progressively get bigger, each placeholder has a name. And of course, when we get into decimal points, remember the tenths, hundredths, all right? 10 hundredths, right? Every time we move away from the decimal point or to the right, okay? So those people who look at the 0 and say it's a placeholder and say 109 represents January 9th, okay, they're doing the same thing that I do, but I'm doing it differently, okay? Um, and I'm employing the same technique when they are looking at the 0 as a placeholder. I'm using the same technique when I look at the time 10:09. Because when I look at the time 10:09 a.m. or p.m., I'm looking at 10:10, and then I'm looking at 09, and this 0, I'm ignoring it because it is a placeholder. And what I'm doing is focusing on 10:09 because, again, 10:09, that's my birthday. All right? Okay, guys. So with regard to math, statistics, and time, all right, we've covered each of these aspects. Oh, there's one more, the date, all right, the date. When we write our dates, okay, you know, we might write, for instance, 10/9 to represent October 9th, or we may write 10/09, okay, or we may even write 10-9, 10 representing the month of October, 9 representing the 9th day, or we may even write 10-09. All right, so the second 0, or the 0 before the 9, is again a placeholder. Okay, all right, so in this video I hope I explained to you what I see when I look at the number 1, 0, and 9. I'm looking at just the numbers, but the extension of the numbers is an association that I'm making with my birthday, because I'm looking at, I'm playing with these numbers and imagining that that is my birthday, 10 and 9, October 9th, all right? But it goes even further, because 10:09, if I look at the clock at 10:09, I still see October and 9th, because the second 0 is just a placeholder. All right. So that concludes the lecture on 1, 0, and 9. What I will say at this point is, again, let's go back to Bentons Law and think about how unlikely it is that we find 1, 0, and 9, you know, in nature. And the one thing that I'll add to that is the stories that I tell in my book. You know, I'm not telling you about moments in my life where I walked outside my door searching for 109. Where is it? Here is it. Oh, I found it. Oh, look at that. Oh, where is it? Where is it? No, I'm talking about moments when I happened to see these numbers and I just said to myself, hey, that's cool, because I see my birthday. That's pretty much it. All right. So please, if you have any notes. Oh, wait, before I end this video, I can't end this video without explaining that there are other schools of thought. Okay, we got into the math, the statistics, we talked about time and dates and how, and the conventions that we use to describe these numbers when we see them. But what about the qualitative values of these numbers, which 109, again, this is a rabbit hole. 109, you know, where we are following these different values. We're following the qualitative values that are assigned or associated with these numbers, given different circles. Circles being groups of, you know, communities, groups of people. For instance, my favorite at this time, the nation of gods and earths, right? Peace to the gods and earths, because according to their supreme mathematics, the number 1 has a qualitative value of knowledge. 0, or cipher, okay, is knowledge plus cipher, all right? And 9 is born, all right? All right, I'm going to jump over here and grab my book. You okay? You okay?
I'll let you.
All right, so I grabbed my Supreme Lessons of the Gods and Earths, all right? And in this book here, it explains the values, the qualitative values of each number, 1, 0, and 9. And if you will, indulge me, it says here, daily mathematics, the number 1 is knowledge. And knowledge is the foundation of everything in existence, all right? And I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with this definition, right? I'm not going to read this in its entirety, but I'm going to skip down to 0, which is knowledge add-on cipher. It says knowledge is to know, and in order for one to know, one must have this knowledge. All right, cipher is a circle consisting of 360 degrees of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, which is life. All right. And then finally, the number 9, born. Born is to bring into existence, to be brought forth to supreme life. All right. So I find it a huge coincidence. Okay. It's not only a coincidence that I find these numbers when and where I do, but I find it to be a huge coincidence that my numbers are 1, 0, and 9, and 9 is the number of born, or it has the qualitative value of born. Because again, as I said, when I look at these numbers, I see my birthday, birth, and being born. They're synonymous, right? So I find that really to be pretty groovy, man. All right. So that's where we're going to leave off on this video about 109. Oh. This is my new shirt supporting Paul Mooney's brand. All right. Check it out. All right. Peace. Man, that was 20 some minutes.